Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. This is a good, don't you think? This is a great movie to kick off our, Meryl Streep series. A movie that really highlights the breadth and depth of her ability as an actress. Over the course of 3 hours, she's in this movie not 3 hours.
Well, there's a reason at the beginning of her career it was supporting actress, but yes.
Yeah.
But yes, there's...
All right. We have a lot to talk about tonight, Andrew, and it's a long movie, and I think everybody knows when we have long movies, long shows. That's not always true.
It's not always true.
Well, we're going to do our best to fix that. So let's jump right into it. We have I think we have one bit of correction follow-up.
We do, yes. Last week, we read some of our iTunes reviews from around the world, and one of those reviews I attributed to one of our wonderful listeners, Brendan, down in Australia, and realized, thanks to a message that he sent us, that the review that I read by Mel Bowie was not his. His actually was, I guess it just wasn't showing up, but it's...
Yeah, it wasn't there when I looked at it.
Yeah, but it's there now, and it says, everyone's a critic. But, which is a great start. But few are as easy to listen to as Pete and Andy, hosts of The Next Reel, a relaxed weekly podcast covering a wide range of film interests. Whether you like to keep up with the latest or discover or revisit the greatest, you can rely on Pete and Andy to keep you informed and entertained with their friendly banter that makes this one of the most enjoyable and least pretentious of film podcasts. Thank you very much. For in-depth discussion on current hits and misses, catch the monthly Film Board Presents episode. Get excited about what's yet to hit your local cinema with Pete and Andy's weekly trailer reviews. Test your movie smarts with the Instagram Guess the Movie Challenge. Learn about some of cinema history's all-time greats, or maybe not so greats, as your hosts present their various film series, featuring movies with a common theme, including such diverse topics as the cinematography of James Wong Howe, film noir, adaptations of Stephen King stories, and the films of Hollywood's golden year 1939, including Only Angels Have Wings, starring Rita Hayworth, who gave good face. Oh, Andy, how could you? Yes. Hey, Madonna was there first. For me, this is the most fascinating and enjoyable part of The Next Reel. Having been a movie buff for over 40 years and having seen most of the films covered by these guys, one of the few podcasts talking about such movies, it's fascinating to hear how these classics are regarded by others, seeing many of them for the first time. Almost as fascinating is each end-of-program Flickchart ranking of the film discussed, as each host tries to persuade the other to rank the film to their way of thinking. And if they can't, well, that's what the rock, paper, scissors game was made for. I thoroughly recommend this show for when it comes to film podcasts. I find myself eagerly awaiting the next Reel. Thank you. That's a wonderful thing to say. We really appreciate it.
So great. That sets the new high bar for fantastic reviews. I'm gonna steal that and put it on the website. It's wonderful. Thank you.
I think Australia may be the next Sweden.
Aussie.
Oi, oi, oi!
There you go. See, we know some things. This is so. Then when we're gonna do our world meetup, we're gonna go to Sweden, and then we're gonna go to Australia, and then we're gonna come home. That's pretty much it so far.
There's a long line.
I'm still excited about that.
Very much.
I have a bit of follow-up from the good Ben Lott. We have a new blot spot. This covers Force Majeure, the Swedish film we did last week on our Listeners Challenge. And you and I actually quite liked this film.
Yes, we did.
Ben didn't as much in the blot spot this week. He says, "It is hard to express how little this film interests me. I'm usually into narrative movies where lots of events happen, but Force Majeure is a movie where one thing happens. Sure, it's very introspective, and it asks the audience to question how they would react in a similar situation, but I could have got that in 20 minutes. 2 hours. I think it cut off. It must have cut off or something.
You want me to finish it? I'm seeing it.
Do you have the rest of it? My email didn't go through all the way.
2 hours is just too much. I struggled to stay awake and lost interest before it was even half over. It's certainly a beautiful film, but just completely bland. Your rank 67 out of 197. My rank 183 out of 197.
Wow.
Yep, very different opinion there.
Two paths diverge in a yellow wood.
Well, I think Ben would be on the Per side of things. Well,
absolutely.
Ended up on the Gustav side of things.
That's right. Good film. I say we move right into the telling of the people wearing We Are From.
Where are we from?
This This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hello.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, we're kicking off our Meryl Streep series with Michael Cimino's 1978 Vietnam epic, The Deer Hunter. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe on iTunes or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And seriously, we're about to talk about this movie that immortalized Russian Roulette on screen. You think I'm going to come up with a gag about games here? Yeah, you should head over to Instagram.com/thenextreel and play The Next Reel's Instagram. Hashtag Pony Prize, hashtag This Ain't No Deer Hunter, hashtag Guess the Movie Challenge. Andy, how did we do this week?
This was I guess you could say, a rough week for old Steven.
In so many ways. First of all, let's just say he's sick.
Yes.
God,
so feel better.
Yes, send Steven. You know what you should do? You should take a picture of something. If you're a regular player, take a picture of something soothing on Instagram, and I want you to tag Steven. What is it? Steam Robot.
Steam Robot.
Tag Steam Robot on Instagram and send him, because he's sick, and our beloved friend Steven Smart needs good energy. So that out of the way, it still wasn't a good week for him.
It still wasn't a good week. Another great week for the Swedes, though.
Sweden dominates.
Straight out of the gate, Image 1, Gustav Larsed nails it with Into the Wild, the fantastic film that was really quite a haunting true story that Sean Penn directed with Emil Hirsch, Vince Vaughn, Catherine Keener. Fantastic film and wonderful imagery. And yes, Glarsed nailed it and is once again entered to win the 2015 Pony Prize.
Congratulations, Gustav, our dear friend. Another point on the board for Sweden. Andy, it's time. Let's do trailers. Now, you say we've talked about this movie, is what you say. You say, not that we've talked about it, but that it seems so familiar we should have. Is that an accurate representation?
That's accurate, and I think you kind of agreed with me.
Yeah, I did. I even had to go look it up, and I realized that I thought about why it sounds so familiar, because it's everything I wanted the paper to be. I'm talking, of course, about Spotlight. Writer-director Tom McCarthy brings us the true story of how the Boston Globe uncovered the massive scandal of child molestation and cover-up within the local Catholic archdiocese, shaking the entire Catholic Church to its core, according to IMDb. I think the trailer just came out a little while ago, a week or two ago maybe, and I missed it somehow. But this looks awesome. The cast is fantastic. Rachel McAdams, John Slattery, Liev Schreiber, Michael Keaton, Mark Ruffalo, Stanley Tucci, Billy Crudup, Len Cariou, Jamie Sheridan, Brian Darcy James, Paul Guilfoyle. It just goes on and on. I cannot wait to see this movie. I'm such a sucker for news movies, newsrooms, newspapers, television news. I am such a sucker for these things. Tom McCarthy, I don't know a whole lot about. He's an actor. He's been in a number of things. He only has 7 writing credits from great movies, but I've never associated his name with them. Some not great movies. $1 Million Arm, I think was good. He's got a story credit on Up, but The Cobbler was not something that I think did very well. We talked about wanting to see it. It was one of our trailer picks. It did not go well, but he was an actor. He's been in a number of things, including most recently his turn as Michael the Robot in Pixels. So there's that.
I love Tom McCarthy. Well, I should say I love The Station Agent. That's like one of my favorite movies from 2003. Just a fantastic film. The Visitor was a brilliant film. I heard Win-Win was really, really great, but I missed that one. This one looks like it's in line with those earlier ones. The Cobbler seems like a misstep. Anytime you cast Adam Sandler in something, seems like a misstep.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting about this is, too, the one that I love so much is Good Night and Good Luck, and he was in that, and I did not remember that.
Yeah, he's one of those guys who's kind of a supporting player sort of actor. You know, his face is very recognizable. But I I love those small, intimate stories that he likes to tell, like Station Agent, Visitor, Win-Win. That's kind of what I like. This looks like it's a little bit bigger, but I'm right there with you, man. This looks just fantastic.
Yeah, it really does. And you mentioned Station Agent, Win-Win. I've seen none of those. I missed all of them.
Well,
the ones that you like the most.
Those are the ones to go out and see.
All right, I will. They're now on my list.
Excellent.
This one looks like it is coming out November 6th, 2015.
Excellent.
It'll be on my birthday list.
Well, mine is another November movie. Mine's going to be a Thanksgiving film. Just in time for piles of wonderful food on the plate. We're getting yet another Frankenstein movie with piles of body parts to make another being come to life.
Well, that's a gross connection.
Yes. I was looking for something, all right. I didn't have a lot of time.
That was a terrible thing that you found.
Yes, it was. Hey, they're the ones who are responsible for it. I blame them. Victor Frankenstein. Oh, it's just derailing so fast. Victor Frankenstein looks really interesting. It is a story of Frankenstein told from Igor's perspective, which I find quite interesting. Daniel Radcliffe plays Igor, so no kind of hunchback, hunchback sort of character for Igor in this film, just a normal-looking assistant. And James McAvoy plays Victor von Frankenstein. And I love that actually somebody in here goes, Frankenstein? And it's like,
and then everybody laughs.
Yeah,
it's like they'd seen that movie.
I was like, maybe they're going to pull out the stops and play around with this a little bit. I hope so. I hope they're going to do something fun. Because, there have been a lot of Frankenstein films. I really enjoy Frankenstein films, but there are also a lot of really bad Frankenstein films. It's just a lot of them aren't worth watching. I hope that this one is one that is worth watching. It looks fun. I like the characters. I like the way they're looking. I like the way the film looks. Paul McGuigan is directing this. He did Lucky Number 11, which I actually liked quite a bit. Push, which I didn't see Push or Wicker Park or Gangster Number 1. I haven't seen a lot of his stuff. He's been doing a lot of TV lately, like Scandal and Sherlock and Monroe. I'm not sure. I missed Sherlock. I feel guilty for that, but I haven't seen anything else that he's done. But that being said, the stuff that I have seen of his, I have liked. So I feel like he could potentially pull this off. Max Landis is the writer of this, and that piques my curiosity because he is certainly a personality taking after his father, and he's written some stuff that American Ultra coming out this year. I didn't realize that's something that he had written.
Yeah, but very excited about that.
But Chronicle we've talked about. And I like that quite a bit. I haven't seen most of the other stuff that he's done. It's just a wide variety of shorts and other random sorts of things. But Me, Him, Her, did you see that one at all?
Nope, did not see that. But Haley Joel Osment.
Yeah. So
I like the old Haley Joel.
Mm-hmm. So I'm very curious about this one. I don't know yet if it's one that's worth running out to go see, but I'm certainly curious about giving it a try. I like they're taking a different angle with it, and I hope that it's good.
I do too. I particularly love the tag. I think it's brilliant for this film. Meet your makers.
Right.
It's so good. The only thing I could think about, and I think maybe they alluded to this, casting Daniel Radcliffe as Igor, he's a good-looking lad. If he doesn't finish this movie somehow with a hump, I'm going to be super disappointed. The movie will have failed for me. He needs a limp and a hump. Otherwise, great. I'm really looking forward to it.
That's funny.
I think it looks great. And I think it looks great. James McAvoy. I mean, he's coming off of, I'm going to trust that guy. I like him.
Yeah, he's somebody that he's pretty close to the point where I can say, oh, it's a James McAvoy film and want to go see it.
You're supposed to say vehicle.
Well, I didn't.
When they in the know, if you're in the industry, like I thought you were, you're supposed to say vehicle. I think we established that on our last
film board.
Film board. Vehicle is the word.
It's a James McAvoy vehicle.
I'm going to say it's a James McAvoy vehicle, and it may derail. It may be a vehicle with that gets a flat. It could go into crack the bell housing on the transmission. That would be a vehicle problem. I'm going to move on.
Hey, Pete.
Yeah.
Did you ever piss and take a drink of beer at the same time?
One shot is what it's all about. Beer has to be taken with one shot.
Blessed is the kingdom of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
You gotta listen to me. You wanna stay down here and die? So just keep going. Just keep going. Linda, I just want to say how sorry I am about Nick. And how I know how much you loved him, and I know that it'll never be the same. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. What's the matter with you? Don't you recognize me?
1978, The Deer Hunter from Michael Cimino. This was one of those epic 3-hour.
Yep.
Man.
Yes, it is.
If I never see a Russian Orthodox wedding again, it'll be too soon.
The only thing that really came out of that wedding for me is like, I wish that I was in some cultural sort of thing in my circles where I could go to an event and everybody knew the dance and we all had some like communal dance that we would all do. It's like, that would be so much nicer.
Even if the dances are dumb, like even if it's just, variations of the chicken dance, if everybody knows them all, right. That would be great.
That would be so nice. No more white man's overbite.
Which, let's face it, is essentially what these were. Like, they're all variations of the here. Hold your hands and do hop and kick. And I'm a terrible dancer, so it's so easy for me to do that. But you know who's not? That Christopher Walken.
No.
That guy can dance.
He is fantastic. Have you seen that music video of him?
Have I?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. When he's dancing on the walls?
And yeah, up the escalators. We need to put that on the show notes. Just
yes.
Everybody needs to watch that because it's just magical.
You know what? I'll tell you what. You put on The Deer Hunter, and right about minute 12, I want you to start watching that music video. And you can watch that music video for the next 55 minutes. And then come back to the movie and you'll be caught up. Am I being too hard on it?
It is long. The wedding scene that was the one that kept putting me to sleep. That part is really, really long. I mean, I appreciate what Cimino was doing here. I appreciate the build that he was giving to really get to know these people, but it feels quite interminable.
It's one of those that actually was I think a risky choice. I mean, he had originally said in this thing that it was going to be 21 minutes, and then slowly but surely in post-production he pushed it longer and longer and longer, to the point that his editors were telling on him and they were trying to cut him down. And getting this, we'll talk about post-production I assume in a little bit, but getting this thing made was an incredible circus. The result ends up being a story or a film that tells a story of these three, really centers on these three friends and their experience being drafted into Vietnam and going at the same time to Vietnam. The community they leave behind as cemented firmly in our brains by the wedding, and the community that they then come home to, or in some pieces, and how they have changed over the course of their experience during the war. It's not a pretty film.
No, it's tough. It's a tough one to watch.
It's a tough one to watch, but the very concrete 3 acts structure in this film really, I think what this does for me is cement why these guys, and in particular for me, Christopher Walken, is such a tremendous talent in the field. I mean, this film, as much as I'm not crazy about the film overall, I walked away from the film thinking, I don't really need this one so much. I deeply enjoyed the contributions of these actors. Deeply, every one of them.
Yeah, it was a really strong cast, and it was just exciting to see people like, John Cazale, or I'm not sure how you say his last name, something like Cazale, who had such an incredibly short film career, but the 5 films he was in, I mean, pretty stunning run. Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather Part 2, Dog Day Afternoon, and this. Quite a run of films before he died of cancer. Right after this, he had cancer while filming this. Just awesome watching him in this film. George
and never saw the film.
No, he never even got to see the film. He died before it was finished, and so that's just tragic. And then just the like actors like George Dzundza, who is in it, who's kind of a great supporting actor who's been in a lot of other films, but it's just nice seeing him in a film like this he just feels so authentic. Like every one of these actors cast feels so authentic to be playing somebody in this small Pennsylvania mining town. They all feel like they belong to this community. And maybe that is part of the length of the film and part of all the scenes that just, they do seem a little endless. But I do really feel like these people are from this world.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's the argument. I heard this film reviewed by somebody else recently, and that was the same argument that they made, which was that, particularly the wedding, like you are a part of that wedding because... if you were a part of that community, you would experience this part of these people's lives because everybody in the community went to that wedding. Like it's just the entire town shows up at that wedding. That's what they do. They work, they drink, and they go to each other's weddings. And because they give us that experience, we feel so much more when he smash cuts into Vietnam. Like we are on the mountain hunting, one shot, and then suddenly there are helicopters flying down the river. And because of that quick transformation, we are that much more bought into this new chapter of these lives. And I think I absolutely understand that. And I think that's a choice. For me, my experience of the film, I don't feel like I needed that much prologue. It was a lot of prologue, and there was a lot of just, weight in that wedding and the reception that they could have just slashed, and I don't think lost much of the experience.
This is not a wedding like The Godfather, where I actually really feel like that wedding works really well. I think there's a lot of elements going on at that wedding. You've got, Marlon Brando doing his work up in the room upstairs. You've got interesting conversations between Al Pacino and Diane Keaton about his role in the family. You've got photographers, or the police, taking license plate numbers out in the parking lot. You've got the Frankie Valli type of singer. There's so many elements going on in that wedding that all create a much more interesting story going on in that wedding. This is a wedding where it's like, we're just watching a wedding. We do have the interesting character elements going on between some of the people. Robert De Niro clearly has something going on for Meryl Streep, and so there's some interesting character interactions there, but it just doesn't carry the same weight where you feel like the time spent there was worth it.
Yeah, that was my experience too. Once we get out of that, though, and we get to Vietnam and come home, it's a pretty discrete film. Like it feels to me very much more like a film I would sit and watch. It's a film of just the horror and terror of humanity, of what we humans do to each other. It's awful, but it's something I can get through really easily.
Yeah. As hard as it is to watch, it is much more easy to get to, and I think it's just more focused. The beginning feels much more broad because it really feels like Cimino is painting a portrait. And I haven't seen his follow-up to this, Heaven's Gate, the infamous film that nearly cost him his career in Hollywood. I've never seen it. I've only heard all the horror stories about it, but my sense is that it really is like watching the first hour of this film for like 3 hours, something like that. You know, it's just all welcome to this world, and that's really all you get. I mean, that's my understanding. I haven't seen it. I could be wrong, but it clearly didn't work, whatever he was doing with that one. And I think that, I mean, I do appreciate the opening of this. I like a lot of little character moments. Meryl Streep's first scene, I mean, that's a fascinating character moment to watch in the film, where her father, you see just kind of the abuse that she goes through, and before this wedding, and then she's at the wedding and she's got the big bruise on her cheek. It's a very interesting moment to have. You don't ever come back to it. It's just there. And there is a lot of that going on in this beginning. And I like that all of that is there, but it does feel like quite a bit.
Well, it's an interesting thing about Meryl Streep's part, too, because, you know, from what I understand, and I saw this in two places, Wikipedia and another review on the site, that she took this role because she was in a relationship at the time with John Cazale. And that she, you know, it was De Niro who suggested she should just take this role. And she was given the role as kind of the generic girlfriend, and was given the setup. That Cimino gave her the setup of the character and said, go write your lines. Mm-hmm. And so she essentially wrote her own character into the film. And to me, I think it is she is a real highlight in the film whenever we come back to their little town in Pennsylvania. Because her voice and the way she carries that bit of awkwardness, that she knows she's in she's got this sort of perilous loving relationship with Nick, who is fine in the beginning, but doesn't come back, early on or late in the film. And yet she has feelings clearly for De Niro. They play the subtlety of their relationship, I think, brilliantly. I absolutely buy kind of where they are and the sensitivity that they're trying to take in light of her feelings for this guy who's gone. I think she adds a lot of heart to that home, far more than the generic girlfriend character would.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, knowing that she ad-libbed so much of her lines to really kind of create this character just goes to show Meryl Streep's understanding of character and how to get things across. I mean, the fact that she ended up getting nominated for an Oscar for this film, I think is just a highlight to her understanding of how to portray a character and how to bring that character to life.
Have you seen any of the stuff she'd done prior to this, any of the Holocaust or Julia?
I have not. I think the only thing that I've seen of hers before this was what was the bit part she had in
Deadliest Season? Everybody Rides the Carousel.
No, actually, it was right after this. I'm sorry, Manhattan is what I was thinking of, but that was right afterward. So no, I have seen nothing that she did before this.
I haven't either, but I think you're right. I mean, it's fascinating to see that she comes into Deer Hunter and turns around this performance that leads to, awards. That was basically a throwaway part.
Yeah, right. Like, look at all the other girlfriends. I mean, there's
what girlfriends, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Because I think that there was an interesting relationship with Stephen and Angela. There was something interesting going on there with the fact that she was pregnant by another man, and Stephen was going to marry her anyway. His mom was clearly upset about the whole thing. According to Cimino, the father was Nick, and you wouldn't really know that watching the film. But that sort of stuff that he gives to the actors is interesting. And I think there's a really interesting story there between Stephen and Angela that is not brought forth. And Angela's character has some interesting scenes, but nowhere near the level of Meryl Streep's. And I mean, the character, Meryl Streep's obviously a more important character because her relationship with Mike when he comes back is kind of the critical relationship there as they figure out what to do with Nick. But Angela, I mean, has interesting scenes, but she just, I mean, a Meryl Streep is not in that role.
Well, and that's one of the things I found really frustrating when you talk about the kind of relationships at home, that Angela, played by Rutanya Alda, her role in this film, I think, is one of that. It is the role that demonstrates the heart sickness that goes on when loved ones go to war. I mean, she has a full-on breakdown.
Yeah.
And to the point where she's not speaking, she's not, she's the only time we see her is in bed. When after he comes home, Michael goes to see her and she's in bed and she's not speaking, and he barely gets her to write up what we see as a phone number for where her husband is. And I think that is so frustrating, because when we see where these other two guys end up, right? We see them in the hospital. We see them, amputees. We see the kind of relationship that they have as returning soldiers. She is the corollary to that. Like, she's what we want to see about the devastation that occurs at home. And instead, we get just such a brief moment with her that I think is a real missing piece. And instead it moves right back to Saigon, and as they try to go get Walken's character, which is fine, but I just think it's a missed opportunity to really demonstrate, if you're going to show the horrors of war, this was a great opportunity to show the horror abroad and at home, that it really devastates those left behind.
Cut out some wedding and give us a little more of that.
Yeah. Let's see. So let's talk a little bit more about our principles, shall we?
Yes. Yes, that's fine.
What, you don't like that idea?
I think it's a great idea.
You don't sound really committed to it.
Well, I wasn't sure if we're completely moving away from the story yet, or are we going to come back to this?
Oh, no. Hey, let's talk story. You want to talk story? Let's keep talking story. You want to talk about the Russian Roulette. You're ready for that.
Well, I'm very curious, because this film ended up becoming quite controversial because of the Russian Roulette and because of the way that the Viet Cong were depicted as just absolutely horrible people. The thing that I think is interesting about how people reacted to this is that, saying, there is no evidence that anything like this with Russian Roulette was ever actually happened in any POW camps, that any Viet Cong actually did this to any American soldiers. There's no evidence. And people were very upset that Cimino had this story about this happening in this POW camp. And it's like, the story, this movie only exists because of the Russian Roulette, which I find very interesting. The fact that there was this other script that was out there called, I'm going to blank on what it's called. I'll keep looking while we're talking. There was this other script that these two other writers had.
The Man Who Came to Play. Louis
Play.
Garfinkel and Quinn Redeker.
That's it. Thank you. They had written this script about some guys who are going to Vegas to gamble via Russian Roulette, and they liked the script but didn't think it was complete. The EMI, the producers at EMI who were producing it, they brought in Cimino and some writers to actually rework it, and it incorporated this Vietnam War and everything. And that's the only reason it's really there, but it really becomes kind of the central focus of the film, which I find very interesting. And people got so upset saying it never happened. Cimino and his producers all were saying, it's kind of a parable of war. We're not really saying that it has to happen in order for something horrible or for people to have to deal with horrible things. And I think that's what they were trying to say in this film, is that it didn't necessarily happen, but horrible things can happen, and this is how these people dealt with it and how it affected their lives. And this goes back to conversations we've had several times about either biopics or films that deal with real situations, and where is the line as far as what can you depict and what can't you depict? Gone with the Wind certainly brought up a lot of things. Even going back to Social Network, the manipulations that the writers had on those films, with the realities of the world, it's like, are they, is it okay to do that when you're creating a story versus telling what really happened?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, and the way the story goes, this, the rewrite was done, hired Derek Washburn, Cimino hired Derek Washburn, he gave him a month, and what he was doing while writing the script was not researching what was going on, but watching television, and, just watching the war footage from Vietnam. And that was the extent of his experience, just sort of creating this scenario. I don't know. I've heard from those mixed reviews from those I know who served in Vietnam, and this is one of the things you do in high school, right? It's go interview a number of vets for your U.S. history class. That was one of the things I did, and the experience was talking about the films that impacted them. The Deer Hunter, from those who were there, it's pretty even split. One, yes, it absolutely captures the grit and the sense of experience, whether or not they experienced Russian roulette, there was sort of immaterial, but just captured the chaos, particularly in the kind of the fall of Saigon. And others who say, this was nonsense. This was not the movie that did justice to the experience. And that's a little bit frustrating for me as somebody who is wildly ill-equipped to even talk about, the experience of war. This movie did a great job of turning me off of it. Right. I mean, in terms of the experience of the cultural reality of war, this is a movie that puts me further from the center of thinking that humans need to be involved in armed conflict with one another.
I think it's a very effective anti-war film, and I don't even know if it's an anti-war film. I just think it's a film about the devastation that people can go through. I mean, they may not, but the devastation that some people can go through when faced with these horrible war situations. And it's a fascinating look at it for me. And it's like, it's interesting because the things that people focus on when they look at historically accurate depictions of things. Quentin Tarantino had a lot of people upset with the Mandingo fighting that he had in Django Unchained. I don't remember if there was a big uproar of people upset that Hitler's killed in the end of Inglourious Bastards. Mm-hmm. In the way that he is, in the way that that kind of whole situation happens. But clearly, historical manipulation is something that people do. I mean, honestly, every story that anyone makes of a real story has manipulation in it to tell a better story that fits for the purpose of the screen. Unless you're doing a documentary, and even in a documentary, the filmmakers are deciding which facts to keep in and which facts to not keep in order to make the story move better. There's no way of avoiding that. So it becomes a line as where is the line where you stop manipulating and you just focus on telling the true story, or is it always okay to kind of manipulate because in the end you are just telling a story?
Yeah, I mean, I think you extrapolate that to just straight up fiction, right? I mean, fiction is doing essentially the same thing. It's telling a story, but it's telling a story to convey a message, and it's just doing it in a way that is, that never really happened. When you look at movies that cross the line, like Inglourious Bastards, and give you a real setup, but fictionalize the end and fictionalize the main players, or you look at Titanic, there was no Jack in Titanic, right? In the real story of the Titanic.
Despite what some people think.
Despite what some people think, there was no Jack. There is a, I don't know. I feel like the movie, at least Cimino's and Washburn's vision of the movie and what it does and the story that it tells and the message that it conveys is a strong one. and it is incredibly powerful, and it's delivered by an incredibly talented cast of actors in a way that is uncomfortable and challenges worldviews, and that, all of those elements count to me as a win, and I think controversy be damned.
That's how I feel. I find it incredibly powerful, even if it doesn't have a disclaimer saying, the events in this film are fictional. I don't know if it needs that. There's enough evidence out there. I mean, geez, just read all the people's reviews saying, that it never happened. That's all I need to go, oh, okay, that's interesting that it never happened. It doesn't change the fact that I find the film very effective, and I find it a really interesting glimpse into the horrors of war and conflict and how awful people can be to one another.
Yeah. Even if you go one step further and say the artist's interpretation of war.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's our experience anyway. I mean, look at the movies that attempt to do greater justice to the experience of war. I don't know, how would you feel about Saving Private Ryan in this discussion?
Yeah. I think that I don't know if the idea of the little hunt to go find a soldier is that believable, but maybe it happened. I don't know, but it's an interesting look at it. I think the war scenes certainly depicted are pretty realistic, but you have this fictional journey through the war.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that the same thing?
Yeah, it is. And Apocalypse Now, I mean, that's kind of a completely surrealistic look at a war.
Absolutely.
Or, what else? Platoon may be more realistic. I mean, that might be a more realistic because Oliver Stone was really kind of making it a little more autobiographical. But that being said, the fact that you've got like this such antagonistic relationship between several of the leaders and the situation that happens between them, that's pretty horrific. And again, it's Oliver Stone's supposedly taken
his
from
interpretation.
His life, but it's his interpretation of the things that were happening while he was there. So I just don't think you can avoid it. So I understand people getting upset that this didn't happen, but I feel like it's...
I think it's magnified. It would be different if I think without such a horrific premise, right? The Russian Roulette is particularly grotesque, and it's grotesque not just because of, the depiction of, killing oneself with the gun to the head thing, and it happens repeatedly. It's horrific. Just the psychological trauma that these guys go through as participants, forced participants. It's horrific watching the Christopher Walken's transformation. It's that sequence when he first pulls the trigger in the hut. His experience, the line that gets tripped in his head, as you really can feel him changing in that sequence, and allows us to buy his full transformation to the full-on gambler at the end, the mindless sort of just risk taker at the end. All of those things are so horrific that I think it makes that the claim that this never happened that much easier to make, because we don't want it to ever have happened. We don't want to ever have imagined that this thing was possible. And I think that goes back to the artist's interpretation to say, look, really, if I could think of it, it probably is possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And who's to say it didn't happen? I mean, there could have been one guy it happened to. I mean, it's so hard to say, like, if something like this happened. Regardless, it makes for a very effective fictional film.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've solved that.
I don't know if there's truth in this, but IMDb trivia is never wrong. But it says, during some of the Russian roulette scenes, a live round was put into the gun to heighten the actor's tension. This was Robert De Niro's suggestion. It was checked, however, to make sure the bullet was not in the chamber before the trigger was pulled.
I know that was also true in the final scene when he goes up and takes the gun away from John Cazale in the when they go hunting.
Right.
There was a live round in the gun. And he says, "This joke? You think this is a joke?
Right.
Big shot? You know?"
Jeez.
It's scary.
You know, I mean, I
Does it make you want to go hunting?
I appreciate actors who get into kind of the performance and stuff, but sometimes I think of that, our Marathon Man conversation between Olivier and Hoffman, where Olivier's just like, just act, He's like, it's like, you don't have to go that far. You're just acting. It's like,
yeah.
Do we really need to have a live round in the gun?
Right. Let me assure you, the people watching these movies know that you're acting.
I will say, watching, any of the people who have to pull the trigger while they're, going through these situations, it is horrifying.
Yeah.
And it is a testament to the performances from Robert De Niro, from Christopher Walken, from John Savage. It is torture. It really is.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Okay, now can we talk about these guys?
Let's talk about the actors.
Let's start with John Savage.
I really like him in this film.
Yeah. He's pretty good.
And it's an interesting character arc for him, going from kind of this unsure guy getting married to someone that he knows is pregnant with, that it's not his child, to seeing him break down in the when they're in the little POW camp.
Yeah,
is just horrifying. To then him at the VA hospital, and just the way that he delivers lines like, don't make me go home. Just the lines like that. It just really breaks your heart.
Yeah, he's amazing. The contraption they put him in when he was amputated. I mean, that's when I think his for me, his performance really kicks into high gear when he's actually put in the underwater cage, when he screams out to Mikey, "Michael, there's rats in here." That was a pivotal moment for me in the experience. But their escape, when they float down the river, and his really catatonic state as he's just thrown about to the point where he's lifted into the air by this helicopter and drops. And apparently they did this lift out of the water 15 times, and it was the actors, no stunts, and they did it with the helicopter and had to fall back down into the river to just keep doing this over and over again. I mean, it's just exhausting, to him being carried by De Niro, all leading to this amazing, unveiling of his amputated self. I thought his was just a really perfect package of a character. And it's more interesting to me to think about in the original script, The Men Who Came to Play, this was one character. And it was in the rewrite that they split this one character into three. And so, he gets the real physical damage, right, part of the film. He takes on the physicality, where Nick takes on the psychological damage of the film, and Mikey gets what he was able to call his strength.
Right. Yeah.
I thought it was just amazing. He has Savage again has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 things, 15 projects in post-production right now for 2015 through 17. Oh, pre-production for this 2017.
Yeah, he's 202 credits. He's somebody who has not stopped. He just is so busy appearing in it seems like anything, whether it's a film or a TV movie or whatever. He is all over the place. He is one busy man.
Fantastic. I really enjoyed him in this film.
Yeah, he's one of those actors who it's like, I watched him and it's like, what happened to him? And then you look him up, it's like, oh, well, clearly he hasn't disappeared.
Yeah.
It's like he is all over the place, but you just don't, I don't know. He's just one of those smaller actors who just disappears in roles and you just don't realize that he's there. I mean, he's in Do the Right Thing, for Pete's sake. Godfather Part 3, he is all over the place.
Walken, Christoph.
I mean, we've talked about him on the show before. He's fantastic. He's really just amazing to watch. And this film really gave him to us for the first time. I mean, he had been acting before this, but this is really where he kind of came into his own, and this is where he won his Oscar here for The Deer Hunter, and clearly deserved it for the performance he did here.
Yeah, his was stunning. The leading to the final scene, which was improvised between the two men. They sit down across from one another, just like they had in the hut. And the direction was, all right, Chris, you pick up the gun, you pull the trigger, you fall, and De Niro holds your head. And that does absolutely no justice to the experience of that final sequence.
No, it's truly devastating.
It is devastating.
Especially after the moment right before, when you get that glimmer in his eye, and it's almost like tears are just starting to well, as it's almost like he's finally clicking, and he realizes who it is who's sitting across from him, and he says one shot, and it's like. So
with that, how do you justify, like did you at one point, did you think he was going to turn and come back? I know the movie sets up that. it's a pretty grim movie, so it'd be pretty easy to say, okay, we know he's not coming back. But did you really believe that?
I've seen the film so many times, I guess I just don't know. I'd have to go back to the first time I saw this, and I just don't remember at all. Like, was I surprised that he did that, or was I expecting him to kind of put the gun down and go with him? I don't know. It's interesting. It's one of those films where, because of the horrors of what we've seen, it really could be something that plays out either way. Yeah. It almost makes more sense to play out the way that it does, though.
I think it does too. I know, and I think that works better, because I think you look at his character, like the psychological sort of deformation that had happened to him over the course of, from the point where that first Russian roulette game, he'd been introduced to it, to the point when they realized that somebody had put a capitalist spin on it, to the point at the end of the film where we realize he's a central player now. There was nothing for him to come back to. Even if he realized who he was, he had been through so much, he had been damaged sort of so completely that the way I watch him, for me, he recognizes who De Niro is. He recognizes that there's a lifeline sort of back home, and recognizes that there's no way he can ever hold on to it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a timeline, one of the other complaints about the film that people have is a timeline issue with the amount of time that goes on between when the film starts and ends. Because, when De Niro goes back to get Walken, it's the fall of Saigon, which was 75, I believe. And that was years after their tour would have happened. And the fact that Walken would still be alive, like, nobody is that lucky. You don't get that lucky. He would have if he had been doing nothing but playing Russian roulette for years, he would have died long before De Niro gets there. But
did that bother you?
No, it doesn't bother me at all. I'm just voicing one of the complaints that people have, which, again, it doesn't feel like it is meant to be a realistic depiction of war. This feels more like a parable of horrible things that happen and how people deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my take too. It didn't bother me, and in fact, part of the parable, part of the sort of fable of it, really allowed me to believe that he had been that lucky.
Yeah. Well, it obviously, it works within the context of this story, because it's like the what's that Bible story with the character? It's like the movie The Mist, where the mist will never really clear up until a certain deed is done that, it has to happen in order for the saving to take place. And it's almost like Nick was never meant to kill himself until Michael had returned and was there to be a part of it, as a way to almost find catharsis in the situation so that he's actually able to kind of come home and move past some of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And get the girl. That's not probably a shallow way to look at it.
You're a terrible person.
Okay. So De Niro, you have anything else to say about Roberto?
We've talked about him a lot on the show. I just think he's fantastic, and he is mesmerizing to watch in this film. He truly is. He's just that good, It's just more powerful, small moments that really make this character come to life.
So much better than Taxi Driver. So much better than Taxi Driver. And it's hard to look at him in Army Green in this movie without expecting crazy to come out.
Right.
And so that was a pleasant surprise too, just a contextual sort of relief.
A different troubled vet.
Yeah. So good.
Yes.
All right. So we're cruising on here. Can I just say, I think in terms of my favorite experience in the film, it's George Dzundza throughout. And you already brought him up, but I find him I just watch him laugh and I'm in hysterics. And he was the central redeeming feature of the wedding. Because of his jolliness, because he walked around with 8 or 10 cigars jammed in his waistband of his suit, while smoking one and drinking heavily,
and making people drink before they could come in.
Making people drink. Yes, he was terrific. Really, really funny.
And he carries some interesting moments in the film. Also, there's that moment where Michael won't give Stan his boots to wear because Stan is such a mess and always so disorganized. And Dzundza's character is the first one to say, "Oh, come on here, just use Mike's boots." So I like that he kind of has that way about the relationship between the friends, where the ones who don't get together, he feels like the glue who kind of holds them together. He runs the bar where they hang out.
Yeah.
He plays the piano in that incredibly touching, quiet scene after the first hunt, right before we cut to Vietnam. It's very touching the way that he kind of brings out the pensiveness that everybody has. And then he's the one who's breaking down at the end and starts kind of humming God Bless America, that leads Meryl Streep and then everybody else to kind of start singing it. It's very interesting, his character, and how key it is. It really is kind of a catalyst character that helps other characters through scenes.
It is, and symbolically, I mean, you brought up the bar. The final sequence of, when he brings everybody back to the bar and gathers them around for food. The symbolic importance of food in healing is not to be taken lightly. In history of drama. I mean, that is a central theme, and the fact that we end with them, with the remaining friends, including the ones that were really difficult to get back to this table, to overcome all of their barriers around this table of food. He brings them into like the beating heart, the symbolic beating heart of their community. That restaurant around that table to break bread is. It was really powerful. So I think you're right. And that makes an interesting sort of dramatic punchline to his overall character arc, which for so much of the film has been comedic. Mm-hmm. That he's able to turn that into something more meaningful is really great.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we don't see enough of old George. We should see more.
Chief of the boat. Chief of the boat. Nothing? Crimson Tide, man.
Oh yeah. Basic Instinct is what I always picture him in. That's the one thing that I'm always stuck on. He's the one who gets ice picked in the elevator.
Yeah. Still, ain't no
chief of the boat.
Ain't no chief of the boat. Get it, Mr. Straight, Mr. Hunter. I am not on your side.
That's a good movie.
So good.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else that really shines for you?
I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I did enjoy Chuck Aspergren quite a bit as one of the other members of the group, who apparently this was his only film. He actually apparently was a worker at the plant that just really kind of clicked, and they thought he'd be a great addition because he's just such a big hulking brute of a man. And so they brought him in. He just worked perfectly as the sixth man in this group. He does a great job, and that was it. This is the only film that he's done. You don't know if he went. I don't know if he went back to working in the plant again or what, but that was it.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah,
he was great. He just totally fit.
He did.
He started humping the Cadillac. That was the best.
From the inside,
from the inside. A real highlight.
Oh, so
all right. So we talked about how complicated this thing was to actually get made. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, this is one of those movies that Americans didn't want to make this movie. It actually took this British company, EMI, and it took, I believe it was producer Michael Dealey, who kind of latched onto that script, The Man Who Came to Play, and got it made with Cimino. But Cimino is one of those directors who is a bit of a piece of work. He's very trying with his actors, trying with everybody involved. The script writing process was trying, the acting process, the filming process. The initial budget I think was $8.5 million, and it only increased from there. It was a difficult film to get made.
Right. I mean, after this, there were two duds. I mean, really, what was a real highlight after this? You're the Dragon?
Maybe. I mean, I think that Cimino's interesting career, for me, happened before this film.
Silent Running.
Up to this film. I didn't, I still haven't seen Silent Running, but Magnum Force, I think,
is
right? Great. And I love Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. That's a really interesting kind of a buddy robbery film that goes in places that you wouldn't expect it to go. I really enjoy that film. The Deer Hunter, I think, is I do enjoy this one quite a bit. After this, it's like Heaven's Gate is the big mess that kind of nearly killed his career. It was 5 years before he did Year of the Dragon, and then The Sicilian, Desperate Hours, The Sun Chaser, and then that's pretty much it. So
I can just about guarantee we are never going to do this particular film, but he's uncredited as a writer on The Rose with Bette Midler. I'm peripherally interested on his experience writing The Rose uncredited after The Deer Hunter.
Yeah.
I find that, I wonder what he contributed to that.
It's an interesting directional shift there.
Yeah. Anyhow. Okay, so we have talked about the cinematographer of this film before, I believe.
Vilmos.
Have we? I'm almost sure we have mentioned this name.
I feel like we have,
because we did Close Encounters.
Oh yes, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. For me, the real highlight was, and the hero image that I chose for the website for this really is the one for me, is the incredible wide shot when De Niro comes back from the war and his first hunting trip that morning. He walks out and he climbs up on this ridge of the mountain, and the clouds are like coming up to him, and you see other mountains kind of appearing in the peaks, and it's just him in the middle of this epic landscape. And that, for me, is just absolutely nails what Vilmos does really well. And in capturing these incredible landscapes. And he does it in Thailand on location shooting for Vietnam. He does it on the deer hunting hunts themselves, the stalking of the deer hunting. It's just a just beautiful, demonstration of how to capture landscape.
Yeah, it's a stunning work here. A lot of, I think he did a great job of keeping the town always looking really drab and gray, keeping the interiors looking much more colorful. All the areas had their own looks. Vietnam had kind of a lot more green and life-like in Vietnam, which was interesting. And then the mountains were much bluer. And so it had kind of nice color tones between all the different areas. And the imagery in this film, whether it's, big, intense scenes or beautiful mountaintops or intimate scenes of two people in bed, I think he does an incredible job of creating just very strong images that work well to tell the story.
There's a sequence where they're driving up to Dzundza, or they're driving up to hunt, and they all get out to go to the bathroom in the bushes, and Dzundza's the last one back in, and the camera is like sitting up in the woods. And it's looking down on this turn on the highway, and there are no cuts as they drive away and then back up and then drive away again. Every time, teasing Dzundza that he can get in the car, but he never can. And it's a gag that you've seen played out because you've probably done it yourself. And it's not funny, and then it gets funny, and then it's not funny, and then it gets funny again. And I think all of that is credit to not moving the camera. And just letting the joke appear on screen, and it's just another one of those great examples of smiles I got from that particular choice.
Absolutely. You know what else he shot that we talked about?
What?
Blowout.
Oh yeah, that's another one.
Yeah,
and another one where he makes those static camera choices. I think that's another great example of how to use the camera and just let what happens.
Yeah. And I liked the music. Stanley Myers, who is not a name that we've talked about as far as composers, did some interesting themes in the film that I liked quite a bit. I think that the music is very haunting, and it's touching, and it's poignant. It is very nice. His cavatina, performed by classic guitarist John Williams, different than the John Williams we all know and love. This is totally different John Williams. That theme from The Deer Hunter, I think, is just a really beautiful theme.
I totally disagree.
Really?
Well, I don't disagree that it's beautiful. I think it is beautiful. I find it absolutely inappropriate for the film, and it makes me crazy. It is way too saccharine and sweet. And there is one sequence where the theme itself is used in an interesting way. It's when De Niro comes back and he stays in the cab and drives past his welcome home party, and he's in a hotel and he's kind of fallen apart. And anytime that theme comes back, in this case in sort of a minor variation, I think is interesting. But that. It's just a mind-numbingly sweet guitar bit in the beginning, and at the end, I just find it grating. Terrible.
Interesting.
Yeah. I can't stand it. I've never said, even from the first, it was in when I first started taking piano lessons. I got one of these books, these collections of, popular movie and TV themes. And The Deer Hunter was like right after the theme from Cheers. And so I actually grew up playing this thing when I was like 8 years old, long before it was ever appropriate for me to see The Deer Hunter or knew it was a war movie. I thought really it was about hunting deer, which was traumatic enough for me at the time.
This clearly came out at a time when people were kind of ready to talk about the Vietnam War. This film came out, Coming Home came out, and there was one more film, and I'm blanking on what it was, but one more film came out. It was two more films. The Boys in Company C and Go Tell the Spartans all came out in 1978. They were all other Vietnam War films that came out this year. That kind of opened the floodgates for a good number of other Vietnam films to kind of start appearing. And it was a little bit, at the Academy Awards, a little bit kind of a battle of Vietnam films, war of the anti-war movies, as some people have said. People battling, should Coming Home win or The Deer Hunter win? And Coming Home is a very interesting Vietnam film that deals with, as the title says, coming home, as John Voight comes home and he's in a wheelchair, and how does he deal with that? It's as if The Deer Hunter was made and followed Stephen instead of Michael. That's kind of what Coming Home is.
Right.
But so that was kind of a big split. And so when the Oscars, when it came down to it, John Voight ended up beating Robert De Niro for Best Actor. And then, but Christopher Walken did win for Best Supporting Actor. And then picture went to Deer Hunter, obviously. Jane Fonda also won for Coming Home for her performance there, her second Oscar after Clute. And Maggie Smith, not in a Vietnam War film, but in California Suite, she ended up winning Best Supporting Actress, beating Meryl Streep. First time out of the gate, and she did not win. But, she's had more nominations than anyone else, so I think that...
She could have really been something.
That's right.
If only the tides had turned in her favor. Oh, well.
Oh, well.
How did the film do with the dollars and cents?
The film did pretty good. Like I said, this film, the original budget was $8.5 million. Cimino and his overspending ended up bringing the budget to $15 million. So that's quite a jump.
It was an $8 million wedding.
It was all the wedding. It went, so $15 million, which is about $53.5 million in today's dollars. So, still not too bad. It ended up grossing domestically about $49 million. Adjusted, that's about $175 million. So I didn't find any international figures, but that's enough for it to have done pretty well for itself. It ended up with an adjusted profit per finished minute of about $663,000 per finished minute. So, it did pretty well for itself.
It certainly did, and it's one of those films that I think really, even as long and as graphic and as controversial as the film is, I think it still it holds up under the weight of these performances of this incredible cast. It's absolutely, I think, worth watching.
Yeah, I think it is too. I completely agree.
Let's rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel, everybody, and make sure you set up an account so that you can rank the movies that we're watching as we rank the movies that we're watching, and see if you agree.
All right,
where do we start?
First up, The Deer Hunter or Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I think I'm going to say Oh Brother.
I'm going to say Oh Brother. The Deer Hunter or The Adventures of Baron Munchausen?
I'm going to say The Deer Hunter.
I am too. The Deer Hunter or La Vie en Rose?
I'm going to say The Deer Hunter.
I will say The Deer Hunter. The Deer Hunter or A League of Their Own? I'm going to go with Tom Hanks on this one. Say A League of Their Own.
Yeah, I'm going to do... There's no crying in Vietnam. No, there probably was some crying in Vietnam.
Well, we certainly saw plenty of it, so... The Deer Hunter, what's strange about The Deer Hunter? One of the posters, it's like Robert De Niro with the red headband. It's like, isn't it Christopher Walken with the red headband? Wouldn't that make more sense for the poster?
Yeah. Because did De Niro wear the red headband ever?
No, he only wore kind of whatever is the yellow one that they're wearing in the camp earlier. Yeah.
Right.
So, The Deer Hunter or Driving Miss Daisy?
Driving Miss Daisy.
I'm going to say The Deer Hunter.
Why?
I find it more challenging. It's something that challenges me more, and I think just the scenes with all of the Russian Roulette and all of the post-Vietnam scenes I find just really powerful. And not to say I don't find Driving Miss Daisy powerful, but this, I just feel there's a lot of strength and challenging situations brought forth from the directing.
All right, so do you want to explain why you then picked A League of Their Own?
Because it's more fun to watch. And Driving Miss Daisy is not as fun to watch as A League of Their Own.
I'm just saying, I'm not one to necessarily question our rationale on these things. I mean, I know it's very much a gut thing, but I do find it a little bit interesting contextually that just a second ago you picked There's No Crying in Baseball, which is clearly not as challenging to watch. And now you want to be challenged as soon as Miss Daisy comes on.
It's true.
I think you're ageist.
Maybe I am, Pete. What are you going to do about it?
I'm going to rock, paper, scissors you on principle.
Oh, okay.
How do you feel about that?
This is what Flickchart's all about. Sometimes you rank a movie because of, you laugh more in another, but then another time when you're ranking it, you have to rank it on quality. But it's always up in the air. But let's rock, paper, scissors anyway.
I want to do that. All right.
1, 2,
3.
Rock.
Paper. Boom.
Son of a monkey.
You just got karma'd.
All right. Driving Miss Daisy takes it. The Deer Hunter or Field of Dreams? Field of Dreams for me.
Oh my god. Oh my god. You are ageist. That's what it is. It's a movie about old people, and you're going to pick the one about Russian roulette. But if it's about baseball and old 2x4...
Absolutely.
I'll give you Field of Dreams.
Okay.
I have no problem with that. You, sir, however.
The Deer Hunter or the Roaring Twenties? I'll do the Deer Hunter here.
No idea.
I'm doing the Deer Hunter here.
The Deer Hunter.
Oh, there weren't any old people in Roaring Twenties, though. But the Deer Hunter or King's Row? I'm going to do the Deer Hunter.
Deer Hunter.
Holy cow. We're finally there. 121 out of 198.
All right. There you go. It's probably about right. Who am I kidding? That's exactly about right. I won. Hey, where do we go from here in our Meryl Streepathon?
We're going to her next film that she did right after this, which is I shouldn't say the next film that she did right after this. The next film that she received an Oscar nomination for after this, which was Kramer versus Kramer. It did happen to be the very next year, though. Woody Allen's Manhattan happened right in between.
And she was, what is this, Seduction of Joe Tynan? That's another thing.
Oh, yeah, there was
another 1979.
There was another little
Alan
thing
Alda.
Yeah.
She got second billing on that one. But anyway, almost immediately right after was Kramer versus Kramer.
Super close.
It's the second in our series of Meryl Streep comedies.
Yes, indeed. Laugh Riot, just like this one
Laugh Riot, yeah.
I haven't seen Kramer versus Kramer in a long while, so I'm very curious to come back to it and see it again. Especially now that I'm a father.
Yeah, right. God, it makes me throw up in my mouth. I mean, in a very talented way.
Are you saying you're talented at throwing up in your mouth? What are you saying?
I'm telling you, I throw up while appreciating the talent of my mouth. What? Hey, this has been a good one, Andy. I gotta go to bed.
I think that's probably for the best, Pete.
All right, I'm going to do one. It's a 1-star. Clearly, acute observer did not like this film as much as we did. And again, I'm not saying I'm going to go watch this every weekend. Just saying. Had some redeeming value for me. Mm-hmm. And so acute observer says, almost as if to answer my statement, this is one of the worst movies that I remember. It has almost no redeeming value. Was it meant to be a buddy picture about Nick and Michael? The amount of drinking could have made the title The Beer Hunters. Note the product placement for advertising.
That's pretty funny, I will say.
The beer hunters. It was just one. It would have been the beer hunter, to be fair.
Well, Oklahoma Apache Dave said, don't buy it. Gave it a 1 star. The movie was brooding, plotting, and boring. Typical of the times. Wow. Very judgmental of the 70s. I think it was striving for, quote, deep, end quote, and philosophical, but wound up being pathetic. Save your money.
Wow.
Clearly, Oklahoma Apache Dave is not a fan of anything from the period. I guess he just finds everything brooding, plotting, and boring. So just skip it.
Skip it. Over long. Most long. Wow. Yeah. Thanks, Amazon. It is hard to believe we have been having in-depth conversations about movies since 2011.
You are telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you, and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
Season 5 had some great adaptations, like our Meryl Streep Oscar-nominated performances series. We covered adaptations like Kramer vs. Kramer, Sophie's Choice, and The French Lieutenant's Woman.
It's a real Sophie's Choice between those books. You see what I did there?
Yeah. And I don't think it's quite at the level of a real Sophie's Choice.
We also did Snowpiercer for our Bong Joon-ho series, adapted from the French graphic novel Le Transpersonnage. Man, I love that movie.
We had our 2-part 1939 series that included adaptations like Gone with the Wind, Ninotchka, The Women, and The Hound of the Baskervilles.
A number of those 1939 movies, like Goodbye, Mr. Chips, also tied into our recent 1940 Academy Award Best Picture nominee series.
Our naughty children horror series had creepy adaptations like The Bad Seed, Village of the Damned, The Innocents, and Children of the Corn.
For our Hayao Miyazaki series, we talked about his take on Lupin III with the Castle of Cagliostro, plus his own The Wind Rises.
Some great listener choice picks too, Viridiana and The Great Escape.
And for our David Mamet Wright series, The Verdict, The Untouchables, and Glengarry Glen Ross.
Plus, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang from our Shane Black series, adapted from Brett Halliday's novel, Bodies Are Where You Find Them.
Dive into the sources for all of these at thenextreel.com/originals.
Every book you buy helps support the show. Check out thenextreel.com/originals today and find your next read.